Welcome back, Defenders. We're going to continue talking about the war between Israel and Iran and what impact this has on Russia and Ukraine. But first, we're going to follow up on the deadly attack that took place 3 nights ago. Death toll from Russian attack on Kyiv rises to 28. Search and rescue efforts lasted for 39 hours, and 23 bodies were pulled just from this one apartment building. These were women and children, sleeping in their beds, deliberately targeted and killed by the Russian military. At the time of this attack, Zelensky was in Canada for the G7 summit. He's now back in Ukraine, visiting the site, and this is what he has to say. Today I was at the site where a Russian high-explosive missile struck a residential building in Kyiv. I honored the memory of those who were killed. This vile attack, carried out in the middle of the night, claimed the lives of 23 civilians. My condolences to their families and loved ones. Assistance for all those affected is ongoing. This strike is a reminder to the world that Russia spurns a ceasefire and chooses to kill. I am grateful to all our partners who understand that Ukraine must grow stronger every single day. I thank everyone who is ready to exert pressure on Moscow in a way that makes them feel the true cost of this war. As the leader of a nation, what do you say when you're fighting a country that blows up apartment buildings to kill women and children sleeping in their beds? So we're going to follow up on the G7 and then get to Israel and Iran. G7 minus Trump rallies behind Ukraine as the United States blocks a statement. The United States objected to language condemning Russia, saying it wanted to preserve its role as a mediator with Putin. An official for the US government said, "That is not the position we take." So the rest of the G7 wanted to put out a statement condemning Russia's aggression, and Trump once again blocked it. Trump was at the G7 for less than a day. He was only there to represent Russia and complain that Putin was kicked out of the G8 in 2014 after Russia invaded Crimea. So Trump rushed back to Washington, D.C. to put up a flagpole on the White House lawn. And I thought this was funny, but the G7 leaders allowed Zelensky to sit in Trump's seat on day 2 after Trump left. I want to believe that the war in the Middle East is the real reason why Donald Trump rushed back to Washington, D.C. Trump reportedly is considering strikes on Iran as he demands Iran's unconditional surrender. This is insane. The President of the United States, who's not even in a direct war with Iran, is calling for Iran's unconditional surrender, which I don't know how it's even possible when there isn't even ground forces attacking each other. This war is entirely happening in the air right now. The US military is moving assets to Europe and the Middle East. We saw 2 days ago all the tankers take off and relocate to Europe, and now we've got additional transport vehicles and more tankers. In addition, more US assets are being moved from Europe to bases in the Middle East now that it's a bit more safe. Iran has pretty much fired off most of their good stuff, and the United States is holding. The fact that all of these assets were not in place prior to Israel's first strike proves that Israel does not trust Donald Trump. They don't think Donald Trump and his administration can keep a secret. Because if anyone in Trump's government warned the Russians this was coming, the Russians would have warned the Iranians. Additionally, another US aircraft carrier is going to be deployed to the Middle East. This is the Navy's newest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford. It's getting prepped now, and it's going to depart from the United States next week to head towards the Mediterranean. The USS Vinson, I think, is also now in the Indian Ocean, making its way towards striking range of Iran. Trump has privately approved attack plans for Iran, but has withheld the final order. The United States military is doing what it does. It has prepared all of the plans to start striking Iran, but they need the president's approval. if this is what the president wants. So is this what Donald Trump wants? And this is an insane statement, beyond parody, but this is Donald Trump's answer to the question, is the United States going to war against Iran?
That news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today. So we'll kick it off for questions here in our new media seat.
Taco Trump. Trump always chickens out. If you want to ask Trump, are you going to do something important? Are you going to do something serious? He just says, I'll make a decision in 2 weeks. If you ask him in 2 weeks, are we going to war with Iran? He's probably going to say, I'll make a decision in 2 weeks. This is the real reason that Donald Trump is freaking out. He is genuinely freaking out. We now have polling. It's been 5 or 6 days. Here is the question being asked to the American people. Do you think the United States military should get involved in the conflict between Israel and Iran? 65% of Democrats say no, probably because they don't trust Trump to lead the military at this time. And 53% of Republicans, this is MAGA, say no. 24 are confused because Trump promised us no more wars. And only 23% of Republicans, 16% of Americans overall, support the United States military getting involved in this war between Israel and Iran. This is devastatingly unpopular, and Donald Trump knows it. And Iran isn't willing to surrender. The Ayatollah Khamenei says Iran will never surrender and is issuing threats and warnings to the United States. This is wild, guys, that in the 21st century, I can go on Twitter and get information directly from the Ayatollah, but this is what he's saying. The very fact that the Zionist regime's American friends have entered the scene and are saying such things is a sign of that regime's weakness and inability. He continues, the United States entering this war is 100% to its own detriment. The damage it will suffer will be far greater than any harm that Iran may encounter. So that is the leader of Iran saying that if the United States gets involved, the United States will suffer more than Iran is suffering right now. And that just isn't true. This war is basically already over in that Israel has control over Iran's skies. They are bombing whatever they want with precision weapons, and Iran, their air force has been defeated. All of their air defenses are gone. Their entire military chain of command, up to the Ayatollah, has been assassinated. Israel is doing whatever they want, and Israel functionally has won, but we have to ask the question, what is Israel's objective? And this is not a ground war. There is no invasion. Israel is not trying to annex or steal any territory. They're just trying to neutralize a threat because Iran has been trying to destroy Israel for 50 years. So initially, the first wave, it was the nuclear facilities, the air defense systems. They were trying to get rid of any stockpiles of ballistic missiles that could threaten them. Now they're going after the factories, the facilities, the refineries, the gas terminals. Israel has bombed the Iraq heavy water reactor because they can. Israel is now going after all of Iran's helicopters. These are their military helicopters. And I think Israel is doing this to help the Iranian people should they choose to rise up and overthrow their government. Israel is declaring that the Iranian regime is beginning to collapse. And I personally don't see this happening, given that this is an external threat. There's 10 million people in the capital city of Tehran, and they're being bombed right now. Even if the people of Iran don't like their governments, When you're being threatened by an external force, it has a unifying effect. Syria was a different case. Syria was in the middle of a civil war. Syria's government had been weakened for more than a decade. Iran has not suffered a civil war. There are no rival factions that are coordinated enough to replace the current government. Iran could devolve into governmentless chaos, but that's not quite the same as what Israel is planning. And I didn't even know this guy was a thing. But this is the Iranian Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. He's been living in exile in the United States since 1979, 45 years. And he is now calling for the people of Iran to rise up against the Ayatollahs. The Ayatollahs overthrew his father and their government in 1979. I'll just show you a little bit of this clip. This is interesting.
می‌همانم جمهوری اسلامی به پایان خود رسیده و در حال سقوط است. خامنه‌ای همچون موشی هراسان زیر زمین پنهان شده و کنترل اوضاع را از دست داده است.
Once again, nobody living in Iran under the age of 45 or 50 would remember this guy, so I don't think he is going to be a catalyzing effect. But yeah, the question is, if the Ayatollah regime collapses, who replaces it? And there's not really a plan. So I'm not going to pretend like Israel is not taking casualties. They are. Iran is launching everything they have, and they're hitting Israel with ballistic missiles. This is a business sector in Ramat Gan, destroyed office buildings. Iran, with ballistic missile, successfully destroyed a hospital. I'm sure killing a bunch of people. But this isn't how you win a war. Iran has no ability to destroy Israel's air force. Iran has no intelligence to assassinate Israel's military chain of command. Israel is 100% dominating this war because size doesn't matter. Iran has 90 million people, but they can't launch a ground invasion. They would have to cross the desert through Iraq and through Jordan and Syria, which they're not going to do. So this isn't going to go well for Iran. But we do need to ask the question, what is Israel's objectives? And at the moment, they're saying they just want to eliminate Iran's nuclear program. Their nuclear scientists, their nuclear facilities. Israel has been massively bombarding the entrance to this underground enrichment facility, and this is the Fordo fuel enrichment plant. Construction on this facility began in 2006, but the International Atomic Energy Agency didn't learn about it until 2009. This was a top-secret underground uranium enrichment facility. You don't do this unless you plan on developing a nuclear weapon. Yes, Iran has a civilian nuclear program, but why would you need an underground secret complex to enrich uranium unless you were trying to develop your own nuclear weapons? So this underground facility, Israel doesn't have the bombs to effectively destroy it. Israel is saying that if the United States does not help them destroy it, they're going to have to send in special forces to put in depth charges or mines or something in order to cause this facility to collapse. So to destroy this underground enrichment facility, Israel is begging the United States to conduct this strike. I don't think Israel has B-2 bombers, but only the B-2 bomber can deploy this specific bomb. This is the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, the MOP bunker-busting bomb. It weighs 13,000 kilograms and is 6 meters long. This is a massive plane, and that is how big this bunker-busting bomb is. So within Israel's arsenal, all of their buster bombs, they can only go about 10 meters deep. But this one specific bomb that the United States has can go about 60 meters deep. Iran's military knew this, so they deliberately built their enrichment facility 80 meters deep. But if the United States were to launch 5, 6, 7, or 8 of these, yeah, I think it would crush the facility and destroy all of the equipment and material underground. That's where we're at. This is what's been going on this week. So I know this issue of Israel and Iran is divisive for people who oppose Russia and support Ukraine. And at the center of this divisiveness is the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. I've already explained to you guys in a previous video, I don't like this guy. I think he is corrupt. I think he's an autocrat. The guy has been in charge of Israel for almost 2 decades, and I want him to go away. And I understand also, a lot of people saw this Daily Show clip of Jon Stewart. It almost has 6 million views. And this is a supercut, I'll link it down below, of Benjamin Netanyahu for over 10 years saying, Iran is months away from having a nuclear weapon. We need to strike Iran now. So either he's been lying for over a decade, or Iran has been trying to develop a nuclear weapon, but they knew if they went to that final step, they would be attacked. So yes, it's obvious. I showed you guys the underground facility. That is not a civilian project. That is a military project to develop a nuclear weapon. So Iran has been doing everything they can for 20 years to get basically 90% of the way to having a nuclear weapon, knowing that if they ever went to that final step, Israel was going to conduct this first strike. So here's the genuine intelligence debate. The United States intelligence community doesn't believe that Iran was weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon. This is what Israel is saying, and the international intelligence community is disputing this. They're refuting Israel. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, just 2 weeks ago, testified that Iran is not close to having a nuclear weapon. This is the debate. This is the confusion. Here is the thoughts from Ambassador Michael McFaul, and he explains it how I understand it as well. If the threat of the theocrats obtaining a nuclear weapon is imminent, then I understand the need to bomb Iran. If the threat is not imminent, then I do not understand the need to bomb Iran right now. We could continue negotiations. The evidence in the public domain suggests that the threat is not imminent. If Trump has secret intelligence suggesting a different assessment, then he should share it with the American people. Israel should share their intelligence with the United States, and then Trump can say, not the specifics, but generally that the intelligence was accurate. And I do not subscribe to the theory that Iran is weak right now, so we have to strike now. I don't know what the truth is, guys. I genuinely do not know if Israel is lying and they were just seizing on this opportunity, knowing that the world is in chaos, and if Israel just made a first strike now to neutralize this threat forever, who's going to stop them? Donald Trump and the United States, the Europeans, nobody's going to stop Israel if they want to neutralize this threat once and for all today. So I'm going to sleep comfortably tonight because I don't care about Iran. And I don't care about Iran based on their actions, the actions of their government the last 4 years. And I want to remind everyone in this YouTube community what Iran has been doing the last 4 years to Ukraine. Iranian advisors killed, aiding Russians in Crimea. This article is from November of 2022. 6 months into the war in Ukraine, the Russians went to the Iranians and said, we need help. We want some of your drones. So the Iranians started giving or selling these Shahed drones to the Russians, and they sent trainers. They sent instructors. They sent technicians to help the Russians bomb Ukrainian civilian cities. These were uniformed military Iranian personnel in the occupied territories. They were in Crimea. They were in Zaporizhia, helping the Russians bomb civilians. Ukraine successfully killed some of these with a HIMARS strike. Iran Iran's military has taken casualties in Ukraine, and the world has kind of just forgotten this. I haven't forgotten this. So no, I have zero sympathy for Iran. And this is kind of what the Chancellor of Germany thinks as well. This is an interesting statement he made to a reporter at the G7 summit in Canada. And this is what the Chancellor of Germany has to say about Iran. First, the reporter is going to ask the question, isn't it tempting that the Israelis are now doing the dirty work for a regime that many in the world perceive as a major disruptive force? The Chancellor is now going to speak. Ms. Zimmerman, I am grateful to you for the term of dirty work. That's the dirty work Israel has done for all of us. We are also affected by this regime. This Mullah regime has brought death and destruction to the world with attacks, murder, and manslaughter, with Hezbollah, with Hamas on October 7th. In Israel, that would have never been possible without the regime in Tehran. The supply of drones from Tehran to Russia. Yes, Israel has done a dirty job. I can only say I have the utmost respect for the, Israeli army and the courage to do this. Otherwise, we might have seen months and years of this regime's terror, and then possibly with a nuclear weapon in its hands. It is very difficult under international law. Right now in the year 2025, nobody cares about international law. China doesn't care about international law. India doesn't care about international law. Russia doesn't care about international law, so we need to fight to win, guys. If Israel wants to go Leroy Jenkins on Iran right now, this is only going to weaken Russia. And the Russians know this, but they can't do anything to stop it. Here's the latest clip from Russia Media Monitor. The entire thing is 10 minutes. I'll link it down below. But Solovyov and his guests discuss Iran. And this is what Margarita Simonyan has to say. What has this past week, strange and scary, taught us? The first lesson is what you said in the beginning, starting your program with the words, what did Iran do wrong? The first lesson, you no longer have to do anything for bombs to start flying at you and high-rises to fold like dominoes in your capital. You don't have to do anything. They'll find a reason. Most of all, I hope that while the world is distracted with all of them, we will quickly finish what we started. As Donald Trump said, just having celebrated his birthday, if it wasn't for the rest of the world, we would have taken care of Ukraine in 3 days. I hope this will happen. So this is the Russians on Kremlin State TV saying, I hope the world remains distracted by Israel and Iran so that we can more efficiently and effectively kill Ukrainians. This became possible because Iran made one mistake. When they were signing an agreement with us, they did not sign the most important article, like the one we have with North Korea. Had they signed that, we're totally shoulder to shoulder, in the same trenches, back to back, things would have turned out differently. I'm not sure if it was up to them, but okay. This is the Russians telling the Iranians, you're on your own. Russia is not going to help you. This is according to the New York Times. Putin has betrayed Iran. Iran gave Russia drones, helped build a drone factory, and signed a defense pact. But when Israel started bombing nuclear sites and killing Iranian generals, Putin gave nothing. Putin is doing nothing to help Iran. Putin is choosing his war with Ukraine and Gulf nation relations over Tehran, showing that Iran isn't worth the risk. Putin won't jeopardize his ties with Saudi Arabia or the UAE. Those countries want a weak Iran, and Russia needs their oil deals to survive sanctions. Israeli airstrikes are pushing oil prices up. Putin benefits by doing nothing. Additionally, in Syria, Russia sent troops to save Assad. In Iran, it's sending press releases. After Assad's regime collapsed last year, Moscow doesn't want another failed bet, and they have no spare military capacity to do anything really. So yes, Iran is Muslim, and generally the Muslim world dislikes Israel, but for the Gulf states, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Iran has been threatening all of them. Iran does want to eventually conquer the Middle East and then control the holy sites of Mecca and Medina. Sunnis right now control the holy sites, and shocker, the Shia believe they should control the holy sites. So Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states are fine if Iran's air force is destroyed, if their ground forces are crippled, if their nuclear program is eliminated. Because if Iran ever got a nuclear weapon, then Saudi Arabia would want one as well, to balance and counter out Iran. And no, I don't really want Saudi Arabia to get a nuclear weapon either. What is the threat? What is Iran threatening the world with? And it's to close the Straits of Hormuz. This is the Persian Gulf, this is the Gulf of Oman, this is the United Arab Emirates, and this is Iran up here. And what Iran has been threatening to do for decades is to mine the Straits of Hormuz. If Iran just dumped hundreds of mines in this narrow gap, then oil tankers or military vessels could not get in or out. This would shut off the oil exports for the Persian Gulf. So I know we're all concerned about the price of oil, but it's not that bad. Currently it's at $78 a barrel, up from $65 basically 2 weeks ago. Yes, in the short term, Russia is going to economically benefit, but I do think global demand is going down as economies are slowing down. And I think this price of oil will go back down probably by next month. It'll probably be back at 70 or 65 a month or two from now, assuming something crazier doesn't happen than the last week. No invitation. We're going to get back to talking about Ukraine, guys. No invitation. Not even a mention. Ukraine to be left out of NATO's summit statements. So Donald Trump is blocking any involvement or mention of Ukraine at NATO events. And Trump won't meet Zelensky at the NATO summit, days after skipping him at the G7. Donald Trump last met Zelensky at the Pope's funeral, and he's now just going to avoid the guy. Trump is a coward, Taco Trump, and he doesn't want any more face-to-face meetings with Zelensky because he has no intention of ever helping Ukraine. Trump's final position is, I'm going to generally support Russia. Senate reportedly delays Russia's sanctions bill as the Middle East is in crisis. Trump is also trying to get a tax cut bill passed. Lindsey Graham is now screaming he has 85 senators co-sponsoring his bill. This would pass with a supermajority, but Donald Trump is still telling the Senate and the House, don't debate it, don't vote on it, don't talk about it. Call your senators. Activists in New York demand sanctions against Russia. If you're a U.S. citizen, get involved. Attend a protest. Call and write your congressman, doesn't matter if Republican or Democrat. Tell them that we need Lindsey Graham's sanctions bill to be debated and voted. It has 85 co-sponsors. This is democracy. Donald Trump is preventing our legislative branch from being a co-equal branch of our government capable of making policy. U.S. disbands group focused on pressuring Russia in peace talks. Trump is done. Trump is exhausted, he's weak, he's tired, and he doesn't want to do this anymore. I think Trump has realized he's not going to win a Nobel Peace Prize. The Middle East is not going to get better. The war between Ukraine and Russia, short term, might not get better. And he doesn't want to be involved at all. So he's just going to not answer the telephone. He's not going to take meetings. He's just going to focus on what makes him happy, like putting up flagpoles on the White House lawn. My country is just very sad, guys. Europeans must step up. Trump unwilling to pressure Putin, according to the former ambassador. You still have my support. For everyone in Europe, for everyone in a democratic country, the people of Ukraine, there's still tens of millions of Americans who are never going to stop supporting you and your cause. But my government is worthless. Trump is worthless. He favors Putin and the Russians. I'll give you a map update real quick, and there's been zero movements by the Russians over the last week. This is Russia's big summer offensive. We're in the middle of it now. And I told you guys, the concern is if Russia can make it to this bend in the highway, they'll then be within artillery and FPV range of Sumy. But they're not making progress. We can go down to the Donbass region as well, and I understand people want map updates because it's visual progress of both sides. But the Russians aren't moving. They're still taking 1,000 casualties a day, and they're nowhere near taking the city of Konstantinivka. It's not going to happen this year, at all. North Korea to send 6,000 more troops to Russia. Does it make a difference? 6,000 troops is less than a week of casualties for the Russian military. Do you remember where we were a week ago? That's about 6,000 casualties for the Russians. This is symbolic. Kim Jong-un likes money, but this isn't having an impact on the battlefield. This is how this war is going to be won or lost. Russian economy at risk of overcooling. This is according to a Sberbank executive. Russia's economy is at risk of cooling down excessively amid a prolonged period of high interest rates and could face challenges returning to a growth path. Russia's economy is done. There is no future growth. There is no economic value to your economy long term when all you do is produce tanks and missiles. Healthy, growing economies need infrastructure. They need hospitals. They need universities. They need bridges, not bombs that don't benefit anyone long term. Car sales in Russia may fall by 25% this year. All of the economic indicators are there that every day things get worse. We need to reach this point where there's an economic collapse of Russia. It could be next month. It could be 4 years from now. Nobody really knows. Russians' grassroots fundraising for Ukraine war collapses. This is according to analysis done by an independent media outlet, and they reviewed the activity across 75 pro-war Telegram channels and volunteer groups, and found that while the number of fundraising posts fell only slightly in 2024 compared to 2023, donations slowed to only 150 million, down from 500 million a year ago. What once took hours to fund in the first 2 years of the war now takes weeks, according to this agency. Fundraisers have turned to increasingly emotional and sometimes guilt-laden appeals to try and maintain engagement. So on Telegram, Russian military groups are constantly fundraising to help units, and there's no support. All of the grassroots support for Russia's war in the first 2 years has more or less evaporated. I understand on camera, Russians have to say they support Putin and they say they support this war, but they're not supporting Putin's war with their money anymore. They've given up. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine, and normally I make these announcements, but there might not be a lot of announcements in the future. NATO to end disclosure of Ukraine aid and defense planning, fearing Russian exploitation. So this was always like a feel-good thing, you know, Estonia announcing this, Poland announcing this. But NATO is going to be more secretive about what they're doing to help Ukraine now. Potentially because they don't want the Americans to know. But this was announced at the G7 summits. Europe commits $20 billion for Ukraine to fill the gap left by US aid cuts. Canada also announced $1.5 billion in new military aid to Ukraine, as well as sanctions targeting Russia. Thank you so much to Canada. Thank you so much to Europe. And we've got Australia. For the first time, Australian sanctions are being applied to Russia's Shadow Fleet tankers. Thank you so much to the Australians. Final video I have for you today. These are Ukrainian search and rescue dogs. For 39 hours, these dogs crawled through the rubble of that collapsed apartment building, looking for survivors at first, but then looking to recover bodies. This is how tired the dogs are after 2 days of searching.
Працювали ребята, кінологи, працювали собаки, ось в таких капцях, щоб скло не поранило ніжки, лапки. Зараз відпочивають. Ось спаніельчик Торей. А як вівчарку звуть? Хаку. Ось відпочивають.
That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.